All right, so welcome back to My Life with Sam Radford. Today I interview, oh man, one of my biggest idols in this world. So he represents West Coast hip hop to the fullest. I'd say he's the gatekeeper for the West Coast. He's been involved in battle rap for 20 plus years. He's also an actor, an entrepreneur. He's just an all around entity. His name is Lush One, aka Nicholas Hyams. And Lush One, thanks for being on, man. This is a big, big opportunity for me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, my guy. Much love.
All right. So first, just gonna go like it's kind of a broad question, but tell me about your introduction to hip hop.
So, my parents had me when they were late 30s, 40 years old. I have two older brothers, 12 and 14 years older than me. So, my parents swear to God that I wasn't an accident. You know what I mean? I was planned. The verdict is still out. You know what I'm saying? Judge Ito's still getting back with that one. We don't know. So I'm not 100% sold. Regardless, I'm here. And my brothers are pretty much the perfect age difference from me in the sense that they were too old to beat me up, but they were close enough in age to put me up on some really cool things. So I was 4 years old the first time I heard rap music, hip hop culture, and it was the song "6 in the Morning" by Ice-T. 6 in the morning, police at my door. You feel me? And I don't know if it was the infectious bass line or the rebellious nature of the lyrics, including a bunch of words I was probably way too young to hear, but it instantly appealed to me. And from there, it was like a real healthy blend of West Coast gangster rap and traditional classic hip hop. Everything from Run DMC, Eric B. and Rakim, Public Enemy, the Fat Boys, Beasties, to NWA, Easy E, Too Short, Compton's Most Wanted, and all of that. And it was kind of an amalgam of all those artists at a very young age that I became privy to and kind of turned me out.
Yeah, like for those listening who don't know who Lush is, I'm a big fan, so I'm kind of followed him for a long time. But if you just hear him speak, as he just emulated there, like he is, I would say, like an encyclopedia of not only hip hop but just pop culture. And he's it's just it shows in his lyrics and everything. So we'll start off with your rap career. So he's Lush has been involved in many different eras and styles. I would say from when I first heard him as a youth, he was in a crew called Delinquent Monastery, Delmon
Yes,
crew.
sir.
So I don't know if that was like your start or at least maybe your first shine, but if you want to speak about Delmon and Plex Rock and I forget the other member's name, but he was great.
Ajax.
Ajax, yes, with
Yeah.
the teeth.
Yep, with the teeth. You know what I'm saying? Ajax is spaced out like the gap between his teeth, like you always said. Uh, so yeah, that was like a Delmon came to fruition in the early 2000s, about 2003. I had already been rhyming since I was in high school in the 90s and all that, but I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California, West LA, 5700 block Clemson, but it was when I moved up north to Oakland in the Bay Area that I linked up with Delmon. That was like the first legitimate crew that I was in where we were like doing shows and releasing projects independently. And that was like, Delmon, it was crazy because um, actually I was in another group before that pretty much you have to have known me at that time to be privy to. And we were called the Goblins. Me and my boy Norm Nizzle, who's
Oh,
serving.
Lush has a line in a song. I think it says "Free the homie Norm Nizzle." Trap
Yeah, yeah,
phone. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. My boy Norm's been locked up since like 2007, something like that. 2000. He's been sitting down for a fat minute. He should be coming home in a few years, but so the three of and me, my boy Norm Nizzle, and our other homie Dish Dash, were in a group called the Goblins. Met Plex Rock, and I started working with him. And he was in another group at the time called Prophetic Rituals, and we all kind of Actually, I battled Plex at a show. One of the first shows I ever did had a small little hole in the wall spot called the Speakeasy Theater in Berkeley, California. And after that, it was like the first time I ever like had lost a battle before, and I was like super in my feelings about it. At the time, I was also really just deep in the streets, running around slanging and doing all kinds of crazy shit. So I like that's the only time in my life where I was kind of like, I don't even care about rap anymore. Like I felt really defeated and was like damn near not gonna be actively pursuing music. And then a few months later, I got a call from one of Plex's homies, and they were like inviting me to join Delmon Crew essentially here. And we started out as a collective. There's like Delmon is like a family. Delinquent Monastery is like a family. There's way more. The three of us were just like the three rappers that wound up getting the most. Like at first it was like 15, 16 of us rapping like on some Wu-Tang shit, but the three of us showed like the most promise and potential. After we did our first couple shows, fans would be like, I want to see more of Ajax, I want to see more of Plex, I want to see more of Lush. So we kind of just like rose to become the forefront and the voice for our entire group of friends and extended family. And for years, you know, like we started out doing shows around the Bay Area. People really like the scene was really insular and incestuous, and didn't really want to have too many other groups join the movement. So it was like we weren't really getting booked that much. So we're like, you know what? If you build it, they will come. So, you know, Field of Dreams, we started throwing our own shows, doing our own thing, and cultivating such a big audience and fans that then eventually they had no choice but to get down with us, and we started getting booked. And then, you know, by like 2006, 2007, we were like the most popular underground outfit in the entire Bay. And we were like, anytime an artist, a major artist from out of town would come to Frisco or Oakland, we were like one of the main crews opening up. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And yeah, we were killing it.
All right. Yeah. So this, I'm not great with facts and things like that. Like I kind of just manifest things in my head. So you're going to correct me on what I'm wrong on. So
You're wrong.
with
No, I'm just playing.
with Delmon, was Chinaman Records? Did they sign you with Delmon, or were you just signed by yourself with Chinaman Records?
Great question. Chinese Man Records actually
Sorry,
is.
my
Yeah,
bad.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
sorry.
yeah. Don't trip, don't trip. Either way, the name's hella problematic in
Weird.
America. I
Yes.
guess. I guess in Europe that gets a pass. They're from France. We come from France, and they. So what happened with that was there is a producer named Philip Drummond who produced my record of music for Dope Runs, and was a big proponent of early Fresh Coast battle rap. He was one of like the main people throwing battle rap events in California in the early 2000s, as well as producing and cultivating a lot of talent. A lot of people came up under Philip Drummond, and he was a good homie of mine. And he was DJing at a random club in Frisco one night, met these dudes from France. They were called Chinese Man. They were an artist. They were artists as well as had a record label, and they were apparently were looking for. They're a big fan of West Coast hip hop, and were looking for dope underground artists to work with. So they wound up reaching out to through Philip Drummond to Plex and myself, and we um, wound up recording a couple records for them, sent the records out to them. A few months later, they were like, "Hey, those records that you got on have moved over 10,000 copies physically on vinyl, and we want to bring you out to France to perform." So they flew us out, and then so Plex and I got signed as the Rollin' Rockers, and that was
That's what it was. The Rolling Rock. It was almost. If you're a big hip hop fan, I don't want to seem like I'm interrupting Lush, but um, there's a group called Boot Camp Click, and then within that, there's many members. And then two of my favorite rappers, one rest in peace, Sean Price. They had a group called Helta Skelta. So that's
right.
kind of what I'm feeling. Lush is getting off of that.
Essentially, yeah, like it was like that was the original intention, but you know, just due to circumstances at the time, subsequently that move wound up kind of temporarily disbanding Delmon, and then it just became like Jax kind of went and did his own thing, and Plex and I stayed together as the Rolling Rockers and wound up getting a deal with them, and then getting another deal in LA with an independent label called Ever Ready Records. So we put out a project with them, and
That
then I
leads
released.
to one of my first full projects that I listened to from Lush was Gold Bricks on the Wall.
Correct. Gold Bricks from the Wall was my first technical ever solo album, because I had music for Dope Runs with Philip Drummond before that, but that was like, a producer rapper album, kind of like in the
I'll never
vein of
forget the music video with Thesaurus on like the transit.
Word, last Dope Run video. Yep. Classic. But yeah, so that's kind of like in the vein of like a Pete Rock and CL Smooth, or Gangstar, like a producer rapper album. But Gold Bricks in the Wall was my first ever solo record. And I did that because I felt like the material that we did as the Rolling Rockers was like, we were low key, like, not for nothing, a little bit ahead of our time. And I say that to say, like, a lot of we were kind of experimenting with a more like electronic based sound, and a lot of different, like, EDM genres way before that became popularized in the context of hip hop. And people weren't really ready for a lot of what we were doing. And that, like, it also brings up the the classic phrase, right message, wrong messenger. Like, I don't think people wanted to hear that from us.
It
So
was
it
a
kind of got.
very it was a very different sound because Lush is grown up and known around the underground scene. As he spoke with his Delmont
Correct.
crew, was a very underground from the roots. He said from Oakland, with inspirations from like Mac Dre and things like that. And then I
Right.
find when he did the group project with Plex Rock, it was ahead of its time. With, as he said, electronic music. There's a song they have called Molly Ringwall, which like I feel like if it was maybe released 4 years later, it would have even popped off more. But it was still popular at the time. But I
Right.
think like a fan of me who's like a fabricated of back in the day, or underground's the only underground thing, where Lush saw what the future of music was going to be in my eyes.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. That's how I look at it too, pretty much. And a lot of people though took it differently. They're like, "Oh, these fools are selling out. They're pandering to, like, try to get." But that's really not what it was. We were trying, like, if anything, we were doing what was genuine to us at the time. Like, us staying in that niche underground sound would have been pandering to our pre-existing audience more than us trying to do something different. But it didn't really necessarily, like, it was dope and it resonated, but not the way that we wanted it to. And like, so I was like, let me just do my own thing for a minute. I was like, Plex was kind of going in a different direction as far as more focusing on family life and not really in the trenches with the music. I was still all in. So I wrote and recorded back to my roots, a more traditional based hip hop album, which was Gold Bricks on the Wall, and turned out to be one of my most successful projects to date.
Yes, and so Gold Bricks on the Wall is with Ever Ready Records after he did the whole Europe run, and we're around 2011 right now, I think.
That was 2011. Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little. I'm so random and deep diving. So Lush, also, if you've ever watched anything within battle rap, you've probably seen Lush either having an amazing quote before a battle, or at least there in the cut. And so Lush, like, I have one episode where I speak about how it started with Rockin' the Party with like Busy Bee and Cool Mo D, and how now it's more formulated. And before now, when we battle rap went from freestyle to Rockin' a Party to like a formulated 3-round system and overtimes, and now I kind of look at it as like wrestling, because there's not really a record. Whereas when I was super big fan of battle rap, was there was tournaments and records, and like it's like, if you have the Warriors against the Cavs in 2017, it's like awesome, So Lush, just speak about your life with battle rap, because I think if you didn't do the hosting and running events, which he ran some of the best events ever, to like historical events, I feel like you would have been an amazing battler if you would have kept on battling. But just name your history. So Lush, I've seen him in videos from Scribble Jam, which is the freestyle era, and then he cultivated himself as the gatekeeper of the West Coast when a league called Grind Time was beginning, and he went over to Orlando, which is completely across the country, to put his name out there and put the West out there. It's very all over, but sorry.
Yeah, no, you good. Yeah, battling to me, like, when I first got involved with battle rap. It was now it's like this pre-existing subculture that's standalone and that kind of exists on the peripheral outside of hip hop. You know what I mean? Like there are people that are involved in battle rap that have no ambitions musically or as an MC overall. They're just trying, they just want to battle rap. When I started it, back in the 90s, it was just a specific skill set that an MC was expected to have. Like an MC, if you're doing it at a elite artistic level, you're supposed to be able to freestyle. You're supposed to be able to battle rap. And it was so that was like I was doing it because it was something I was good at doing, and it was a good way to garner more attention and eyeballs on my squad and elevate me to a higher platform in music. And that, like, so from the beginning I was doing that. I showed some promise and talent at that. I never had any ambition of being successful in battle rap. It was always just being successful within the context of hip hop culture. This is what MCs are supposed to do, like as I kind of rose to the ranks and I realized that my region, the West Coast in particular, up and down the West, from LA all the way, past the Bay Area, all the way up to like Oregon and Washington, like Vancouver, even if we take it all the way up the coast, Tijuana to Vancouver.
Damn.
Essentially, we had a lot of promise and there was a lot of talent. It was like kind of a hotbed, in particular for like impromptu freestyle rapping. And a lot of us, we were all in the same tournaments. We were representing the West in different regions, going out to New York, going out to Scribble Jam in Cincinnati, all these national tournaments and all that. So we like developed a close camaraderie and started making music and doing shows together. So like a lot of the best battle rappers at the time became my close friends. Dudes like No Can Do, Thesaurus, Immaculate, Passwords, Franco, Bo Rap. These were like, that was like our squad. Then that became like the Fresh Coast movement. Essentially, all of us awkwards. There's a whole handful of talented cats that, and we all came up together. FLO. And So from there, at a certain point, I realized like beyond beyond actually being a battler, I was like, we need a little bit of organization because we're all cool, but like to the public eye, we're kind of disenfranchised because there's no real, platform that we have unified that we could kind of present that we're all one movement and how deep this talent pool runs out here. So I started getting involved in the organizational side of things and, curating battle events and creating content for YouTube and hosting and all that. And that wound up just taking off through the roof and becoming like the main thing to this day. No matter how successful my music's been, like that has been what I'm primarily known as.
Lush is an entity. He's so well spoken, but like if you, it's just so crazy. If anything, everything I see with Lush, like for instance, I spoke about he had a song called Molly Ringwald, and we all know who that actress was in the '80s, right? She was big, and then if I'm correct, you met her in Montreal when you were playing shows, and just
Yeah.
goes to show like Lush's dad also directed some really big Hollywood movies. Like
Yeah.
it's just like, what's it like being you, man?
Well, it's I don't know nothing else, player. You feel me? I'm four generations deep in the entertainment industry. My great grandfather was a was an impresario. He's responsible for bringing ballet to America. He threw some of the first concerts where there was integrated black and white performers going back into the 1930s and 40s and things like that. My grandfather was a talent agent and manager. He discovered a lot of famous comedians and actors. Was the original manager for Robin Williams, Jonathan Winters, Carol Burnett. My father's a filmmaker. My mother produces plays. My older brother is a filmmaker. So it's like in my DNA strand, beyond the palm trees are Hollywood stars. So I know nothing else. I grew up in the 80s in Los Angeles when it's like the epitome of, the gang war, the crack epidemic, all this crazy shit going on. But at the same time, I was on movie sets. So it's like they're throwing up sets and I'm on movie sets. And I was kind of like the amalgam of all that is what created me.
Which is just Like it just, man, so yeah, that's it. Okay, sorry, that flustered me a bit because I learned something that I didn't know already.
Yeah, it's trippy, right? And
Yeah,
to reference, just real quick, to reference the Molly story, which is crazy because it was super. It's like hell of meta
that's what I was
because
trying to say. Is Lush is an entity? Like as like I think what a great thing was he was talking about battle rap earlier, and battle rap wasn't his goal. Whereas some people they find it and they're like, okay, that's it. I think he's always had the bigger picture.
word. No, I've definitely had a vision. Whether or not that was popular, the general consensus, like I just had a vision, and I pursue what I'm passionate about, and that's like uh, to my betterment and to my detriment. Like that's just how I am, and I can't really do something if my heart's not in it, and that's always just how I've been. But yeah, the thing with Molly was crazy. So with Chinese Man Records, we wound up having a platinum record with them, which was huge overseas, and we got brought out to Montreal Jazz Fest, which is, for anybody that doesn't know, like one of the biggest music festivals in the world. So we were performing out there, and we found out, Plex and I found out that we were actually that Molly Ringwald was going to be performing at, because she started out as an actress but became a jazz singer, and we're like, okay, so she's going to be performing at the same festival as us. We're like, oh, that's dope, but we didn't really think much of it because there's hundreds of performers there. You never know who's going to wind up where, etc. But at that, it just so happened that we find out she's performing at the same show as us. Like I don't know, I forget if we headlined for her, she headlined for us, but we're like performing. Then we find out that we're fucking sharing a dressing room. So the meta thing is we were performing a song called Molly Ringwald on Molly because I was taking a lot of drugs at the time. I was literally on Molly, and we met Molly Ringwald, and it was like it was. I don't get starstruck, but at that moment, it definitely it was cause for getting starstruck.
Yeah. Well, if you want to speak about meta, like one of my favorite 5 albums of all time is album Lush released in 2018 called Above the Devil.
Word.
And like Lush, before we dive into this, and I know there's like a 7-year gap we're talking about, but I just want to let you know that I was running a kitchen at the time in Ottawa, and you had people from all walks of life that would have probably never heard even about battle rap or like not, bumping Above the Devil, man. Like I have
Hell
friends to
yeah.
this day sending me pictures of 7-4 or I Know You Know, or my girlfriend the other day. I was listening to your music to prep just for the interview and to get inspired,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, you're actually interviewing him, because she's like, I'm small time, right? And so it's just very big. But yeah, so Lush is just, and what I'm trying to say with that is this album in 2018 is so different than his things from 2003 to his Chinese Man record days to his Ever Ready record. He's evolved so much with music. Like it's so weird to say because Lush is such an OG in the game, but like if you listen to the Above the Devil album and things he's released around that time, reminds me of rappers like Juice World and stuff, which is crazy because they're so young. And I'm a big hater, but I found with Juice World, his lyrics were so heavy and hitting. Like I'd sent it to my British father who has a PhD, and he thought it was poetry. And so like with Lush, I feel like Lush is a poet. And like, can you tell me maybe your 2 top inspirations for how you rap? Because he's from the West, but he has such a respect and knowledge for all over. I know he's big into Houston and Texas music. I know he's a fan of everything. Like Lush knows all. So just like what inspires you? Because you were, to me, like you sound like nobody else before, and that's so hard to know because even people who are like, I love Eminem. Eminem basically modeled how Tretch from Naughty by Nature rhymes. So
Right.
I just
Right.
want to like know like what inspired you to have such the style that you have.
At the end of the day, to keep it honest with you, I'm always been really inspired by like grimy 90s like New York rap. That's like the primary, like all regions like have a little bit of splash in my style. Like I love like you said, Houston music. I love Atlanta music. Outkast is a huge influence. I love West Coast hip hop from LA to the Bay. Like I said, growing up, MC8, DJ Quick, all that was huge influences on me. But I feel like overall my like prevailing influence throughout time has always been like Mobb Deep, M.O.P., Capone Noriega, DITC, things like that. Just classic, grimy New York, mainly based on like the storytelling and the imagery, because I like my music to be really cinematic and a visceral experience that brings people into a world. And I feel like no music that I've ever heard, regardless of genre, does that better than that style. It's very cinematic to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100% because I find with I was going through all of Lush's catalog of music because like I wanted to ask him because certain lyrics that he wrote inspired me in certain ways, but I was wondering if maybe he had written them with different intentions because everybody can pick up something from what they hear. So like I think what he's saying is what he's inspired by is just multi layers. Like I've been listening to a lot of Masta Ace lately, and he had a
Word.
song called Mr. Bus Driver, and it's like the whole scenario is just him speaking, but like everything, it just correlates with one another. It's almost meta with what we were speaking about before.
Right, exactly. I love that right there.
So like, can I read a lyric to you, and can you
Bust
ask
it,
me?
bust it.
Okay, so he has a song his on his album Above the Devil. It's the last song, and it's just Lush, and it's called Above the Devil. So I love these lyrics. It goes, kind of lost my mind when my folks died. Then my other folks died, cried both eyes, bone dry, trying to catch a wave at the low tide. Posted at the shoreline, whole life floats by. I'm pouring activist, but I won't strike. So to these haters, that's that shit I don't like. So with me, I'm just gonna break down how it makes me feel. You have people around you and you're learning experiences, and then it doubles, and you realize life, and then you realize that it's an emotional thing and you can't just block yourself from it. And
Yeah,
then when he's talking about catching the wave at the low tide, I think he's talking about maybe emotions and depression in a sense, and he's watching the whole life float by on maybe missed opportunities. But then he's saying he's pouring activists, which is promethazine lean for all of you who don't know. But he's saying I'm pouring activists, but I won't strike. So activists have strikes.
you
And
got
then
it.
Sosa to these haters, which is Chief Keefs, that's a shit I don't like. It's just the layers that you have going through there and the amount of emotions. Like, I faced some problems with alcoholism, and that line or that those few lines, I think about that as me looking at time passed with alcohol. But I think so many people, they can reference it to a relationship, they can reference it to an experience. So I just can you break down what you were meaning with that?
Yeah, that was definitely, you nailed it. That's a great assessment, and that was beautiful. It definitely. I was going through a hard time right then. I was in the midst of getting a divorce. I was in the midst of a period of big reflection. I was deep in substance abuse, and I was kind of talking about like a lot of my depression kind of started. I faced a lot of death, a lot of people close to me. My boy PH, my boy Cadillac, my boy Jacka, my boy Young B, all died. My boy Kodiak, all died within like a 6-month period of time, something crazy like that. Very close friends of mine, and so like around that time is when I feel like I was already spiraling. I'd been spiraling for over a decade, like genuinely. But at that point, things got really out of control, and I was kind of like, and I was reflecting on everything that had gone on in my life, and like looking back, and was kind of like trying not to be consumed by the overall gravity of the pain I was feeling, and was looking for like an experience of escapism while still trying to be grounded in reality. So it's like that's pretty much what I was expressing with those bars.
And to me, as I said, like it can be, if you take any Lush One verse ever, you could probably just put it down as like one of the greatest poems of all time, because I find
Thank you.
in all of his lyrics it's just so layered to me. Like what I like, I'm gonna go off on a weird tangent just because I'm a big hip hop fan. But in hip hop and rap, there's a whole thing where you almost rap in 4 lines at a time. So if you're counting on any rap song, you can go 1, 2, 3, 4. And
Right.
Tupac, one of my favorite rappers of all time, I kind of recently found that he almost rapped in threes, and I found that so unique about him. And one documentary I watched speaks about how a lot of rappers sound like different forms of people, right? So I look at Tupac as a preacher because he would always start low and then go medium and then finish it with an above.
Enemies, Hennessy, yeah.
Yeah, and like I just to me like that's just what's so interesting and what I love. I don't really have a question off that. I'm just speaking about myself,
No,
but
I feel you.
yeah, man. So I just like, and also another thing with Lush is he's always putting, he's always listening to new artists before they get big. And I always, whenever I've seen Lush ever share any kind of new rapper, I listen to it because I know it's going to be good. So like people know No Jumper, Adam 22, and how he's so big with his interviews and stuff. And I would say like if Lush had No Jumper, that would be insane. So speak about right now. Lush is, as we said, he's wrapped in Oakland, born in LA, lived in Oakland for a while, went back to LA. I was asking him for the interview time, and right now he's in the East Coast, and it seems like you're promoting a new project right now.
Yeah, yeah. Did you hear my most recent album, the Hyams album that I just put
Yes,
out?
I loved it. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. What brought me to the East Coast is this. My fiance is from Philly, the outskirts, suburban Philadelphia. She's born and raised out here, and we met. And I was like, shortly after I put out the Above the Devil album, actually, it was right around that time we met. And I was like having a real rough time. My life was getting like had gone to a very dark place. And when her presence in my life, like really revived me, despite me being in such a low point and like so consumed by dysfunction, she kind of saw through all that and saw like the light inside me when I couldn't see it myself, and nobody else for that matter could see it either. And she came and popped up, and it's kind of like like in Ren and Stimpy back in the day when the steamroller drives over Stimpy and Ren has to come with a spatula and scrape him off the ground. Like that's essentially what she did for me. Like she came and revived me. She flew out from the East Coast. I was living in an apartment in LA, actually in the city called Burbank, right on the outskirts of LA. And she, my house was a complete mess. I couldn't tell the difference on my mattress between the dog piss and my own piss. I was just drug addiction, completely consumed. Could barely like get out of bed. Didn't shower for weeks on end. Was had like just gotten I was under investigation from the LAPD. It just wound up like getting around that situation, but it was still like fresh on the heels of that, doing a lot of criminal activities. I had gone through a crazy roller coaster, had been overdosing, all kinds of shit, just like the pits of dysfunction. And didn't care if I died, was welcoming death and kind of glamorizing the notion of dying young, leaving a beautiful corpse, all that shit. And she came and literally just like started like unraveling the dysfunction and helping me put myself back together. But at the end of the day, like they say, no human power can restore you to sanity. So as much as, and she saved my life undeniably. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And she wound up moving us into a new apartment. She moved her entire life out from Philly to LA. We got a new spot, and I was putting myself together a little bit better, but all that dysfunction was still there right below the surface. And it was like kind of putting a band-aid on like a giant pulsating open wound. Like it's only gonna hold it back for so long. And so eventually, like I'm started taking the money for our rent and spending it on drugs and just like fucking shit over, and got us evicted. She moved us at that point to the East Coast, or her spot in Philadelphia. And at this point we're in the end of this is like the end of 2019. So like what's crazy is for those battle rap fans watching, when the Town Business 2 event was going on, that was literally right after we had got evicted. So we're like, I'm putting on a happy face, pretending to get shit organized. Plus I'm like smacked off hella pills. You know what I mean? Like just trying to get through the event, but at like knowing that when that's over, I'm going home to like a shitstorm. And so we moved back to Philadelphia after that. And I'd been working on the Hyams album during that period of time, like when I was living in LA with her. She brought that out of me essentially, and like brought me back to like my peak artistic form and all that shit. And but I was kind of like over I needed to finish like recording the last couple songs and the mixing and mastering of the album. And I also had ran out of the drugs I took with me out to Philly. And I couldn't even I couldn't even walk down the street without her. We were like Siamese twins, so it's not like I could like run off and try to cop some work without her looking. That it wasn't really like that. And we live in like a somewhat secluded suburban area, so it's not like there's someone posted on the corner at the store. Like it's complete opposite of what I'm used to. You know what I mean? Like coming from a big city like LA, and like we're in this small ass town called Plymouth Meeting, which is outside of Philly. Maybe if we were in Philly, it would have been easier to get fucked up, but it was what it was. And so I flew back to LA. I was only supposed to be gone for like 3 or 4 days, and a month later I'm still out there ripping and running, and had recorded a little bit of the album. And I've been doing some work, but also just been popping a lot of pills and just been wilding out the whole time I was out there too. Culminated in me running out of drugs again, and kind of making a cryptic "I need help" subconscious cry for help Facebook post. And my fiance and my two brothers kind of intervened on me, and next thing I know, I'm on a flight to Texas going to rehab. And now I have 13 months sober. I was in treatment for 4 months, sober living for 2 months, and have 13 months clean and sober of all mind altering substances. And it's been the greatest experience of my life. I wound up getting a record deal with Who Mag, which is a subsidiary of Sony Orchard, put out 2 singles and my album thus far. And it's been going crazy. And it's, I feel like it's the greatest work of mine to date. I'll let you decide that though, but it's, yeah, I'm just on a crazy wave as far as the music is going. And kind of everything that I had been trying to do my whole life, but at the end of the day, with my dysfunction and my drugs and like my criminal mind state / activities, always kind of held me back. No matter how much success I was able to garner, there's always like an asterisk attached to it, because I was never firing on all cylinders. And now with full employment of my mental faculties, like there's no stopping what we can do.
Oh man, and like yeah, I just want to say like I didn't I was about to say thank God. I'm not a big believer, but like bless anything and anybody who helped you, because like you helped me. And so I just want to let you know, even though you were going through that, you helped me and many others, I'm sure, through the same thing. So
Thank you, man.
they kind of wanted, that's a almost, you almost nailed that with a segue, because I didn't know if you wanted to speak about it, but I just wanted maybe you to speak on addiction and your point of view of kind of how you got out of it, because I know you were going in and out for a long time, right? And
Yeah.
I dealt with it myself. I dealt with alcoholism. I finally kind of stopped. I was at the point where I was just using it to fall asleep. Like I didn't even care about getting drunk, And like I was wondering to myself every morning when I'm hungover and not inspired to do anything, like, why did you drink the night before? Well, because I wouldn't sleep if I didn't. But yeah, if you just want to speak about addiction and, maybe what helped you get away from it other than rehab and helping with others, and your point of view now that you're 13 months sober.
So I started, I feel like I've had addictive tendencies my whole life, going back to, I always had like a glamorized image of drugs, even like before I ever even got high. I remember being in, you guys in Canada have DARE class. You remember DARE, like, which is
Yeah,
like the
man.
anti, yeah,
Drugs are bad. That's why I dap. But
you're right.
but no, yeah, DARE is a program which is actually, it's funny he says that. It almost promotes drugs to youth. And it was one of
Word.
the first programs that sold merch. It's one of the first merch things I've ever bought was a DARE shirt. Just like having a Che Guevara shirt as a white kid in the suburbs is cool.
Yeah.
You have a DARE shirt as well. Sorry.
A DARE shirt and a Bob Marley poster. Yeah, exactly.
Fuck yeah.
No, like I remember being in DARE in like 11th when I was 11 years old, and they had us making like these little poster boards, like anti-drug poster boards, and like I like thought the drugs were dope when they were talking about why they sucked and why they're so destructive. I remember like drawing a bunch of like hippies smoking a joint, you know what I mean, like with the Cypress Hill hat on, and like, you know what I mean, like some dude like drinking alcohol with a bunch of girls around him and shit. Like, yeah, I mean, I remember like obviously, you know, heroin sounded like it was all bad, and I was definitely afraid of that. I definitely broke my fear of heroin eventually, but at the time it sounded scary. Coke, you know, growing up in LA in the 80s and early 90s, I saw crackheads all over the place. You know, I saw that had some negative effects on the community. So I was like, maybe that's not a good thing. Again, you know, I crossed that bridge as well several times over. We didn't even call meth back then. It was called speed. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
it was always methamphetamines, but it was like colloquially referred to as speed. Like that's what that didn't that look, you know, as cool as fucking Nazi soldiers might be to some people. Like I was like, you know, I'm not methy enough to meth around just yet, so I wasn't really trying to. That wasn't it. But you know, things like smoking weed looked super chill, and taking LSD and mushrooms and having conversations with the Smurfs, and you know, I hope they're not scared of me. I'm not Gargamel, so that looked super cool to me too. And I kind of just always had an idealized image of that. Started drinking and smoking. I was 12. Got arrested for the first time when I was 13. Went to juvie when I was 16. Between 16 and 19, I went to 9 different treatment centers throughout. And From the ages of 19 to 38, I was had like my life was pretty much a roller coaster. It was like damn near 2 decades of uninterrupted use. I was there. There's times where I'd be successful, but even during then, it was completely drug fueled. I think the saving grace, and this isn't something I recommend doing because it had a lot of long term detrimental effects on me as well, and I still wound up succumbing to it. Was that my addictions would kind of like fluctuate on. I would go through like a 5 month opiate phase, and then to get off of that, I would go through like a 1 year ecstasy phase, and then replace that with like a coke phase, and like then back to opiates, then you know crystal, and it was all kind of like it was like a rotation, and they would overlap. And there was times where I would be like strung out on multiple things at once, but it was kind of like that just elongated the process. It's the same destination. It's like taking the scenic route as opposed to a shortcut. You know, this the destination being jails, institutions, and death, right? And 2 out of 3, and damn near the third, I got him checked off the box. So you know, addiction pretty much just was rampant for me forever. And how I got sober was desperation. There's I can't tell you what's going to work for you. All I know is worked for me, and it was going to treatment. You know, and it was like having a spiritual for me. It was having a spiritual experience as a result of desperation. That desperation, like you know, it's no wonder why so many people, when they're in prison, they turn Muslim or find Jesus and become born again Christians because they're desperate. You know what I mean? And that spirituality is birthed from that. It was kind of like the same thing for me. And you know, I've always like believed in God, but I never really found God until that moment. And beyond like the unfathomable concept of God being like some entity in the sky, like, and you know, like that's kind of like the unseen hand manipulating and like creating everything in the world around us. What I found God to be, which I do believe, by the way, don't get it twisted. I believe in God, you know, and I give praise to God for what He's done for me. But for those that don't have a hard time wrapping their head around God conceptually, I think we can all agree that if God is everything or God is nothing, you know what I mean? There's no real middle ground between that. And if
mhm.
God is everything, even if we don't know what God is the us being the best version of ourselves, you know, like me being the best version of me, and me adding to the stream of life and positivity into the world as opposed to taking from it, you know, like me being what's the best version of myself, you know, like what are traits that I believe if God did exist. Let's say hypothetically you don't say you don't believe in God. If God hypothetically did exist and God's the best version of you, what does that look like? Well, you know, am I loving? Am I caring? Am I forgiving? Am I accepting? Am I present? Am I tolerant? And if I'm doing all these things, embodying the traits that I believe God do encompass, then I am living on God's will, whether or not I even believe in God. I'm being the best version of myself possible. And that's what I really had to do. I had to undergo a complete psychic change because beyond the drug use, I was a fucking narcissist. I was a pathological liar. I didn't care about how my actions affected other people. All I cared about was the immediate gratification of getting high, delaying consequences, not having to feel the shitstorm of emotions, which my life had become essentially. And once I really essentially had to like surgically remove my head from my anus at a certain point, and that's really what it was. And so it's like not just about not doing drugs; it's about being a conscientious human being the best version of myself. And that's what I learned through going to treatment. I learned that in treatment. And I'm not saying other people need treatment. I don't judge other people's path. Some people are able to still smoke weed and drink. You know what I mean? Like I can't do that. Like that's if I smoke weed within a certain amount of time, I'm gonna start drinking and then I'm gonna start popping Xanax. And then next thing I know, it's all out the window at that point. So I have a physical allergy. I'm allergic to drugs and alcohol. It's like if you're allergic to fucking macadamia nuts, you could be on an airplane and they're cooking with that shit and you're gonna not be able to breathe all of a sudden, right? Like, and that's the same thing for me. So and I've partied enough for several lifetimes. There's no other, I could check everything off the box. Like there's nothing I haven't done. You feel me? Like I've done coke with George Clinton, Charlie Sheen, and I've smoked with Snoop Dogg. Like what the fuck else I got to do? As far as drugs are concerned. Like
No,
like
that's I'm gonna say respectfully because what I've learned becoming an adult, I'm 27, is I learn every day. And I ignorantly laughed before I said I was gonna say thank God for your recovery, but that was a very well spoken a way of it because I don't feel you weren't speaking about religion in a sense. You were speaking about being the best person you could be, which is a great positive to take from that, right? I found
100%.
I find just like with religion and politics, there's either people are just trying to argue or be against one another, or they want to learn from one another, which hasn't really been going on a lot lately. But yeah, man. So all right, so that was amazing, and I just want to say, yeah, blessed to your girlfriend. She's also an
Thanks.
artist as well, too.
Yep. She's killing it. She's amazing. Like dope. She's like in a whole different lane, but her and her brother, they're a group called Urbano, Urbano, all caps. And they it's like really dope pop, dance, EDM music with a little bit of hip hop thrown in the mix, and they're fire. So yeah, we're they're signed artists as well, killing the game, and it's an honor to, even though creatively we're very different, we still all support each other's visions.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so I'm not gonna. I was gonna ask you a bunch of battle rap questions and stuff, but I think we've known what we know who you are and everything. So, because like also I spoke to Lush like a tiny minute before this interview, and I said it's kind of just about life. So I'm just gonna ask you some random questions.
That's it.
Your favorite diss song of all time?
Favorite diss song. That the what was it called? Checkmate. The Jadakiss diss against 50 Cent.
Oh, great. That's people are always be like people these days be like, what are you talking about? Drake versus Pusha T is the only beef I've ever heard of. But no, that's an amazing one. Mine was like I'm on the spot. I'm not gonna say mine. Okay, I'll say mine was Curtis by Cameron.
That's a fire. So I love Curtis. I
Show
love
some
Curtis.
courtesy, Curtis. You
I,
deserve to be nervous.
yeah, that song is great. I love Cam's diss against Jay-Z is fire too.
Yes.
That's a with Max B on the hook. That one is crazy. Yeah, but I think Jada against 50 and Beanie against Jada. Those are like my two favorites.
I'm
Oh,
a
but yo,
huge
actually, let me take that back. Also, let me add something else. DJ Quick, Dollars and Cents versus MC8.
See,
That's
that's OG. That's what's you know what? Either or, you just said a super New York question or a super historical hip hop thing. So it just proved who you are from what we were speaking about earlier.
word, yeah. But when DJ Quick told MC8, EIHT, should I continue? You left out the G because the G ain't in you. I was like, that
Oh,
that was mind blowing at the time.
and
I was like,
see,
what?
people think that bars started when Lil Wayne started rapping, but like my favorite, like that was a bar that like that today would be, people would be like, oh my God, you know,
Exactly. And that was
my,
1994. You feel me? Like,
well, so can you speak to me? This is about me for a second. My favorite rapper ever is Fife Dog. Uh,
nice.
I named my cat after him, the Five Pound
RIP
Assassin.
5.
Yes. I'm speaking about bars like you got BBD up on your bedroom wall, or like
Yeah.
bust a nut inside your eye to show you where I come from.
Yeah.
Uh,
Bust nuts on your couch. Now you got Siemens
Siemens
furniture.
Furniture.
Yeah.
And Siemens was like a furniture company that was very big on
Word.
TV in the 90s. But like
Let
when
me save the little man from inside the boat. That's incredible too. Like that. Wow.
Bo knows this and Bo knows that, but Bo don't know
Bono
Jack
no
because Bo
Jack
can't
because Bo
rap.
can't rap. You know?
So what do you
Fire.
think? What do you think about Fife? I think he's super slept on.
I love Fife. I love Fife. Yeah, he's like Fife is like at the end of the day, I feel like Q-Tip is the clearly the child and the genius behind A Tribe Called Quest. You know what I mean? Like he produced all those beats pretty much. You know what I mean? Like he is. Well, Dilla came on with Beats, Rhymes, and Life, but the first three albums is all it's all produced by Tip. You know, he like thematically set the pace. He has an incredible voice. I'm a Q-Tip's one of my favorite artists. But Fife gave that really necessary energy that just offset it. He made it a lot more fun. It wouldn't have been Tribe without Fife. He just added so much character to the group. And like, you know, like, and obviously he's like more lyrical than Flavor Flav and ODB, but like it's that same type of energy that he brought, like the same thing that ODB brought to the Woo and Flav brought to Public Enemy and things like that. He was like, you know, he's more than a sidekick because it was like a 1-2 punch, but he was just all personality. He was fun. Like Fife is definitely one of the greatest MCs of all time, hands down.
Why don't we say Q-Tip was Jordan, Fife was Pippen,
Perfect.
Ali
Perfect.
Shaheed Muhammad could be Horace Grant or Dennis Rodman, and then
Yeah.
Jerobe's like
He's BJ Armstrong coming off the bench.
yeah, I was gonna say Paxson too or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's Paxton. BJ Armstrong would probably be Consequence then. You feel me? Like,
Yeah. Well, after watching The Last Dance for sure.
yeah.
Okay, so I did a random one. I did one that was narcissistic. Okay, so how about, let me say, what's your top 3 albums of all time for hip hop?
Ooh.
And
Ooh.
this isn't on spot. You don't have to go 1, 2, 3. Just whatever comes to your head. Like I always say, Shawshank Redemption when I speak of movies.
Not mad at that at all. Top 3 albums of all time. Ooh. Um, I'll just tell you the first 3 that popped in my head. Illmatic, Ready to Die, and The Infamous.
Boom. That's, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. I think it's always nostalgia too, right? Like for me, the Score by the Fugees, because it was one of the only CDs I had as a kid, you know?
Well, that's up there too. I
And
mean,
it's one of my favorite, or College Dropout with Kanye West to me is probably,
another. They're all up there. All those records are up there. I think that at a certain point, nostalgia is always going to play a part, but we have to like remove that from these conversations. Like,
yes.
because like for me, like the most nostalgic album of all time, which is also up there as well, is the Far Side Bizarre Ride to the Far Side. Like that's one of the first tapes I ever got. You know what I mean? Like, well, as one of the first tapes when I was like became obsessed with hip hop, and because I always loved hip hop, but it was like once I kind of realized it was even like a genre of music and not just like music, but like it was once I really realized the whole cultural aspect of it and put 2 and 2 together when I was in 7th grade and became aware of like, you know, Brand Newbie and the Alcoholics, groups outside of what was being just played on the radio, you know what I mean? Like then that tape like held a lot of like I wore that motherfucker out. But
Yeah, yeah, like until you beat it to death, you know. Like
death.
one time I brought the Blackout on a road trip with my friends, and at the end of it, they were like, "We like listen to the radio?" But I'm like, "What are you talking about? I want to listen to my first song again."
No, I
Okay,
literally played that tape till like the tape broke type
that's
shit.
crazy. So,
Yeah.
um, that segues me to another random thought that you just made me have. So I interviewed Nameless from Toronto. You know who Nameless is.
My dog, my
Um,
boy.
and he spoke about, you know, because I'm 27, but I'm still to the point of being too young to like not watch battle rap other than on the internet. So Nameless spoke about how like they used to buy a Scribble Jam tape and they just watch it over and over and over, or like Supernatural versus Juice. So like, can you tell me like the first time you got your hands or saw battle rap that was like, like, because I'm sure for you, maybe it was even the 90s for all I know.
Yeah, so for me it was like being in person. It was being at like literally kids in my middle school and early high school battling each other and just seeing it in front of me. You know what I mean? There'd be ciphers at school, University High School over there in West LA. I would see a lot of talented kids rhyming and shit, and that inspired me. That was the first times I ever saw battle rap. It was in person, and then obviously, you know what I mean, like watching movies like Wild Style and stuff, you see like Mo D and Busy P, things like that. But it was physically in front of my face, seeing rappers ciphering and then starting to go at each other, and the reaction that it would garner from the crowd. Like that was my earliest exposure to battling.
Okay. All right. I'm just gonna ask about like two more random ones, and then I'm gonna do my final thing. Uh, Roxanne Chante versus Bonnie Godiva. Who wins? Roxanne.
I love Bonnie. That's my homegirl. Like, I've been working with Bonnie for 8 years now. You know what I mean? I love you, Bonnie, straight up. But ain't nobody seeing the Queen Chante. You feel
No,
me? Like she'll hop out the cuts and smile. I don't see shit, dude. I think that I think Disaster would have a hard time with Roxanne
I think
Chante.
anybody would have if you watch any battle, the Beef series even, or any battle rap documentary or hip hop documentary, it goes from MC Sham to Roxanne Shante.
The jacket that you got, that shit ain't even leather. I love Roxanne.
What did you
Salute
think
the
of?
Queen.
What did you think about the Rap Cat?
The Rap Cat.
What group was it? Was it Blondie that used the Rap Cat?
No. Oh no, you talking about the Paula Abdul?
Paul Abdul. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Opposites attract.
Yes.
That shit was fire, fool. I remember being a shorty. I fucked with that heavy for sure.
Oh,
Paula Abdul was a bad bitch. You
she
feel
was.
me?
Oh, dude, I'll never forget. And Do the Right Thing. Fuck, what's her name? Rosie Perez dancing in between of that. Like,
Yeah,
oh man.
I was sold. But Blondie, I'm a huge fan of Deborah Harry. Love Blondie. She was
Yes.
like the original hipster. You know what I mean? Like, and she was a huge proponent of hip hop culture. Like, people like when she did that Rapture record back in the day, she was putting on for hip hop and shouting out Fab Five Freddy and all that. People don't realize like she
Fat
wasn't being
Fat
a
Freddy.
culture. Yeah, she wasn't being a culture vulture. She was knocking doors down.
Yeah, so
Love
I
that.
wasn't completely wrong. My bad for the disrespect to the names, but I did know that it was at least something involved in hip hop that Blondie did.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that record "Rapture" by Blondie is one of the first examples of rap music being recorded and released as an actual single. So
Yeah. I could go on all day and ask him nerdy questions about anything.
off
But
top.
okay, so I like to end this with just two pieces of advice you'd give to anybody in life or to yourself 10, 20 years ago. Just because I find that the biggest thing is we learn from one another, and every conversation you can better yourself and you can find out more things about yourself. And you being such a cool entity, amazing person, historical hip hop and culture and everything. Just two things of advice you'd give just to anybody.
See, like I'd be if I was gonna give myself advice 20 years ago, there's a lot of things I would say. You know what I mean? Like number one, don't try too hard. There's so much shit that I would say to myself, but I'd be afraid if I would do that, I would disrupt the space-time continuum. I wouldn't be talking to you right now. You know what I mean? Like, so if I went back and gave myself advice that like maybe my purpose clearly on life is to help people that have gone through a similar struggle and are still in the midst of this struggle that I was fortunate enough to climb up out of by the grace of God. So if I somehow circumvented that process or manifested in a different way, then I wouldn't be here to fulfill my ultimate purpose on this planet. So you know what I mean? So I can't give myself any advice. I'd have to opt out of that and just stay back. You see what happened in that movie Time Cop when the motherfucker touched his punched his face from the past, and they kind of like it just literally warped several dimensions in the space-time continuum, ripped at the fabric. So, the seams of it were just shattered. Like, we can't do that. As far as giving advice to others, I'm very hesitant to give advice to others. I like to use the scope of my own life experience as either a cautionary tale or an example of what to do in certain situations, and but all I would say is you ain't got to do all that, is what I would say.
Damn. You know what, man? You stumped me over and over again. I went into this shaking and my hands were sweating, like and there was about to be spaghetti on something. And your answers every time you just one upped my question. So that was, but I've only done 3 interviews. That answer was awesome. Before, my last person he said buy Bitcoin. That was his 2 things of advice.
Hey, that's good right there. I can't even front.
And Nameless was just basically with you. Be a good person, and it's hard to tell yourself. But I guess I can't say that I don't want you to give yourself advice 10 years ago, because maybe I wouldn't be able to be talking to you today.
You definitely wouldn't.
And I don't want to waste any more of your time. I appreciate, like, this is the biggest thing for me, man. This is like if I don't know. This is like if some white kid from Indiana got to interview Larry Bird, like
Amazing. Amazing.
I don't know. That was but whatever,
Shout to French Lick, Indiana.
Yeah. Lush, can you promote your project that you're working on right now, and things that are going to be released? And then, yeah, man, just if you want to promote anything else or speak on anything else, it's your platform.
No, it's an honor to be here. This is an incredible conversation. Whatever you do, do not doubt your abilities to conduct an interview, because you clearly are very passionate and are a great conversationalist. So just keep at it. For anybody that's watching, you can do whatever you want. Anyone that's struggling with sobriety or recovery or interested in those things, always feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to carry the message and chop game like we grew up together. Shouts to Who Mag Sony Orchard. My album High M's available on all streaming platforms. Look out for my next EP, Horatio's Ski Resort, produced by Chase Moore. Got a bunch of other projects in the works as well. Thank you for your time. Much love. Vibes up.
Thank you, Lush. Chase Moore, if you hear this, I would love to have you on. You're an amazing producer.
Let him know.
I feel like you got with the 667 cult was kind of my death row of 2018. Just want to say that to you, man.
Cult got a lot of things in the works right now, so
appreciate it. Everybody, please look at anything with Lush One. Type in Lush One, search, listen, watch, lift, laugh, love. As I say to everybody, just try to be a better person than you were the day before. We all have struggles. We're all working on things. I'm going to end the recording now with Lush, and then I'm just going to speak to him for a second after. But thank you for listening to this episode. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you got anything from it, appreciate it, and keep tuning in. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.